In the gritty heart of 1970s New York City, where disco beats and neon lights painted the nights, lived a couple named Michael and Sarah. They resided in a tall apartment building that overlooked the city's sprawling streets, a symbol of their dreams and aspirations. But one fateful morning, their lives would be shattered in the most unimaginable way. As the sun cast a warm glow across the city, Michael awoke to a strange guttural moaning sound. His heart raced as he turned to his side, only to find his wife Sarah sitting on the edge of the bed. Her eyes, once vibrant and full of life, were now glazed over, her movements slow and uncoordinated. "Sarah?" Michael's voice trembled as he reached out to touch her arm. She turned her head slowly, her mouth agape, emitting a low moan that sent a shiver down his spine. Panicking, Michael stumbled out of bed, his thoughts a chaotic mess. He rushed to the bedroom door, barricading it with a dresser. He needed to find out what had happened to his wife and how to save her, if that was even possible. Scouring the apartment, he discovered a newspaper article on their coffee table that sent a chill down his spine. It spoke of a new experimental drug that had been distributed throughout the city as part of a clinical trial. The drug's side effects were unknown, and Michael's heart sank as he realized that this might be the cause of Sarah's transformation. With the realization that time was of the essence, Michael armed himself with whatever he could find, a baseball bat, a kitchen knife, and began to search for a way out. The hallways of their once familiar apartment building had turned into a maze of dread, as distant moans echoed from other units. As he moved cautiously, Michael's heart pounded with fear and sadness. His love for Sarah was unwavering, and the thought of having to defend himself against the woman he cherished was a nightmare he couldn't fathom. He desperately searched for any clues on how to reverse the effects of the drug, rifling through medical books and frantically typing on their manual typewriter to access information from a local library. Days turned into nights, and with each passing hour, the city outside descended further into chaos. He could hear gunshots in the distance, the wails of the undead blending with the cries of those still clinging to life. The apartment building, once a sanctuary, now felt like a prison. One night, as he sat alone in the dimly lit living room, a soft, raspy voice called out from the bedroom. It was Sarah's voice, calling his name in a twisted parody of the woman he loved. His heart ached as he realized he had no choice but to confront her, to either find a way to save her or end her suffering. With a heavy heart, he opened the bedroom door, his breath catching in his throat at the sight before him. Sarah's transformation had progressed, her skin pale and eyes vacant, yet there was a flicker of recognition in her gaze as she lunged at him with a hungry desperation. Michael's hands shook as he raised the baseball bat, the weapon that could mean life or death for both of them. Tears welled in his eyes as he swung, a painful mix of love and grief guiding his actions. The impact was brutal, and as Sarah's body slumped to the ground, the room was filled with an eerie silence. Exhausted and broken, Michael collapsed beside her, his body racked with sobs. He had lost his wife, his love, and the world around him had crumbled into a nightmare. But in the midst of the darkness, a glimmer of hope remained, the determination to find those responsible for the experimental drug and ensure that no one else would suffer the same fate. As the city burned and the echoes of screams filled the air, Michael stood among the ruins, a survivor who had fought both the undead and his own demons. With every step he took, he vowed to honor Sarah's memory by seeking justice and redemption in a world forever changed by the horrors that had been unleashed. In the neon-soaked streets of 1980s New York City, the hustle and bustle of life was the rhythm that echoed through every corner. Towering skyscrapers stood as monuments to human achievement, their windows reflecting the dreams and aspirations of those who dwelled within. But on one fateful night, the city that never slept would find itself trapped in a nightmare it could never have imagined. It was a warm summer evening, the air thick with the promise of excitement as people went about their lives, unaware of the impending darkness. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a fiery glow across the city, a sudden rumble erupted, shaking the very foundations of the metropolis. The ground quaked, windows rattled, and a low, ominous hum reverberated through the streets. A brilliant flash of light burst forth from an abandoned subway station, blinding those unfortunate enough to glimpse it. Then, as abruptly as it had started, the sound ceased, leaving the city eerily quiet. Confused murmurs spread through the crowd as everyone exchanged uneasy glances. Before anyone could react, a chilling howl pierced the silence, followed by another and another. Panic surged through the masses as shadows darted across the streets, their gait disjointed and unnatural. Zombies with pallid skin and vacant eyes emerged from the darkness, their movements a haunting ballet of death. Chaos erupted as the once bustling streets became battlegrounds. People fled in terror, their desperate screams blending with the cacophony of snarls and moans. The city's heartbeat had transformed into a pulsating symphony of fear. Amidst the chaos, a disparate group of survivors found themselves drawn together by the sheer force of survival instinct. Maria, a tough-as-nails biker with a heart of gold; Jack, a resourceful stockbroker with a sharp wit; Sarah, a no-nonsense police officer who had seen her fair share of horrors; and Miguel, a street-smart graffiti artist armed with creativity. Seeking refuge from the onslaught, the group made their way to a towering office building, its glass facade gleaming in the moonlight. Once bustling with white-collar workers, it now stood as a fortress against the encroaching darkness. With the horde closing in, the survivors fought their way to the upper floors, barricading themselves inside. As the night wore on, tension and exhaustion gnawed at their resolve. Huddled in the dimly lit office, they listened to the sounds of the undead prowling below, their incessant scratching a constant reminder of the danger outside. With no communication to the outside world, they could only imagine the extent of the chaos engulfing the city. As dawn broke, casting a pale light across the devastated streets, the survivors took stock of their situation. The once thriving city had transformed into a desolate wasteland, its spirit shattered by the relentless march of the undead. Determined to fight back, the group set out on a perilous mission to find the source of the outbreak and put an end to the nightmare. Their journey took them through the remains of iconic landmarks, now hauntingly transformed into graveyards of the past. The survivors encountered not only the undead, but also the remnants of humanity struggling to eke out a meager existence. Amid the horror, they discovered that the outbreak had been triggered by a government experiment gone awry, a desperate attempt to create a new breed of super soldier. Armed with this knowledge, the group embarked on a dangerous mission to confront the scientists responsible for the catastrophe. Through a maze of secret laboratories and underground tunnels, they fought their way to the heart of the operation. There, they confronted the twisted minds behind the outbreak, revealing the tragic consequences of unchecked ambition. In a final showdown, the survivors battled the mutated monstrosities that had once been scientists. Against all odds, they emerged victorious, the threat finally extinguished. As the dust settled, they looked out over the city they had fought so hard to save. Though scarred and forever changed, New York City still stood, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. In the aftermath, the survivors chose not to dwell on the horrors they had witnessed. Instead, they dedicated themselves to rebuilding, to breathing life back into the shattered streets. And as the sun set once again over the city that never slept, its people stood united, ready to face whatever challenges the future might hold. In the heart of the 1940s, nestled amidst sprawling fields and rolling hills, lay the Simmons family farm. As the grey dawn broke over the horizon, a slow and relentless rain began to fall, painting the sky in shades of melancholy. It was in this dreary atmosphere that the Simmons family awoke to a nightmare beyond their imagination. John Simmons, a rugged farmer with a heart of gold, led his family, his wife Martha and their 2 children Henry and Emma, into the kitchen for breakfast. As they gathered around the table, the distant sound of moans reached their ears, carried by the chilling wind that whispered secrets of the impending doom. John furrowed his brow and gazed out the window. In the distance, amidst the mist and rain, they saw figures moving, grotesque shapes that staggered and shuffled. The unthinkable was happening before their eyes. The walking dead, driven by an insatiable hunger, had emerged from the darkness. Fear took hold of the Simmons family as they watched the horrors unfold. The once docile cows that grazed in the pasture were now being torn apart by the relentless undead. The air was thick with the stench of blood and decay, mingling with the scent of rain-soaked earth. The family knew they had to act quickly. Gathering their wits, they armed themselves with whatever tools they could find: shotguns, pitchforks, and hunting knives. They barricaded the farmhouse windows and doors, turning their haven into a fortress. With a radio in hand, John attempted to reach out to nearby towns, hoping to find some shred of humanity still intact. But all they heard was static, and the occasional faint cries for help, swallowed by the void of the dying world. Days turned into nights, each more harrowing than the last. The rain continued its relentless downpour, a never-ending backdrop to the nightmare they found themselves in. The undead horde grew bolder, pressing against their defenses, their moans a haunting symphony that echoed through the farmhouse. As supplies dwindled and tensions rose, the Simmons family knew they couldn't stay holed up forever. They devised a risky plan. Using their old pickup truck, they would make a break for the nearest town, hoping to find survivors and refuge. With hearts heavy with uncertainty, they loaded up the truck, their weapons close at hand. The rain fell relentlessly as they navigated the treacherous path through the fields, the undead never far behind. The journey was fraught with danger, each moment a battle for survival. But the Simmons family pressed on, driven by a desperate need for safety and the hope of a future beyond the horror that had befallen them. After what felt like an eternity, they reached the outskirts of a town. But what they found was a grim tableau of destruction, buildings reduced to rubble, streets choked with debris, and signs of a desperate struggle. The world they had known had crumbled, replaced by an unrecognizable landscape of despair. With heavy hearts, they continued their search for survivors, determined to find a sliver of hope amidst the darkness. Along the way, they encountered others who, like them, had managed to survive. Together they formed a small but resilient community, united by the shared goal of rebuilding their lives. As the rain finally began to subside, washing away the evidence of the horror that had transpired, the Simmons family and their newfound allies looked to the horizon with a renewed sense of determination. The road ahead was uncertain, and the scars of the past would forever shape their souls. But in the face of unimaginable adversity, they held on to the belief that as long as there was breath in their lungs, they would continue to fight for life, for hope, and for the promise of a brighter future.